if we select generic rebar and look at display option, we'll find that the first thing there is the type of rebar line. The default situation is thick. This is a poly line that has been hatched with the value of the diameter of the rebar I have. The second case is what we refer to as double. We can observe that the same rebar is now actually hollow inside, and as a result it becomes two polylines, both of which are surrounding my rebar without any hatching in the middle area. The third case is thin, and this represents a single line. This is the center line of my rebar right here. Of course, the thin and double cases are different from the thick case in that I can apply the features or properties of a line in CAD to them, as you can see here. If I choose the line type now, we will find that my rebar is the same line type as the CAD I am working on. The same applies if I'm working with the double case. You'll find that the line type is applied normally because here it's drawn as either a polyline or a line. We are able to use the properties of that line. But if I activate the style or the line type that's thick, this doesn't work in the other case. Second feature is snap to rebar outer boundary. By default, this feature is no A. And here, when I try to snap, you'll notice that I can't snap to the surface of the rebar. I have to snap to the center of the rebar. If I enable this feature yes, it starts to surround polyline with two boundary polylines. At that point I can snap to the surface of my rebar, which is useful because it allows me to, for example, take a dimension or do anything else. So I can immediately grab the surface of the rebar without having to assume its position, which would only be an approximate guess. Of course, we make this case default no, because this makes it a bit heavier, just a little, since instead of the rebar being a single line with protrusions on the right and left, so now at this stage it will be two separate polylines with a detailed hatch pattern applied to each of them. So what does that mean? It's kind of like providing some additional information for rebar. That's exactly why we keep by default the outer boundary hidden, so it doesn't actually appear in the view. After that we have the display rebar annotation. As we can see now, the rebar in front of us doesn't have any annotation on it. If I enable this display, yes, we start to see, as you can see, that the individual lengths of each of these segments have now appeared. After that we have hide hook data is currently applied no. If we set it to yes, it won't make a difference because I haven't added hooks to the rebar in front of me. If I go to the special data and start to add a hook, then went to the other side and added a hook, at that point it will make a difference for us, because in this case, if I have hide hook data enabled, no hook data will appear, meaning the length won't show up on hooks. So now if I set the hide hook data to no, we'll find that the hook length starts to appear for me after the length of the hook I'm currently working on. After that, we have the option called text height. We'll find that it's set to 10, for example, right now. Of course, if we change it, it will start to increase, and the text height different from the hook. The text for the hooks is separated so that if I want to set the height for each segment differently from the height of the hook, I can do that. So if I want them to be the same, I just increase the hook normally. After that, I have text offset, which is the distance between the text and rebar. So if it's set to 0, we'll find that the text sticks to the center of the rebar. The higher the value, the more the text moves away from rebar, as you can see here. Now, when the offset causes the text to move, it moves inward. Or more precisely, it moves on top of the rebar, because this is my rebar, so the rebar moves on top, or the text moves on top. If I set show text segment on top to yes. If I set it to no, the process is reversed. That the text appears on the outside, so the offset is always outward. So at that point, when I enter an offset value for text, I find that the offset is always, absolutely always, without exception, outward from the rebar, not inward. So where do we find the process of flipping the offset from outside to inside? In show text on segment top or on segment bottom, we can either choose to set this option to yes or no. Next, I have show angles, which displays the value of the angle between each segment and the next. And then I have show alphabetic annotation. This turns all dimensions in front of me into letters. So instead of showing me the lengths of each segment of them, it now shows me the first segment as a letter, then the second, third, and fourth as letters. Instead of just showing numbers or simply distances, specifically in the case where one of the segments I have to work with is not straight but is actually curved, and our display method is set to dimension here. We find that we have what's called radius text offset, which specifically represents the distance. If it's set to 0, we'll find that this distance is the arc length, 864. This will be the arc length that appears in front of us. And this is the radius of the arc. The radius text offset distance is defined as the space between the value of the radius text and the value of the length of my arc. The more we increase it, the further it moves away from us. And of course, if we flip the text to the outside, the process will follow the same method that happens with the rest of the text direction for all the other segments.